Good evening. This regular meeting of Independent School District 535 School Board is called to order at 5:30 p.m. Tuesday, September 6th, 2022 in room 137 of the Edison Building. This board acknowledges this site and all RPS sites are situated on the ancestral land of the Dakota people, and we honor the Dakota nations and the sacred land of all Indigenous peoples. Interested members of the public are welcomed and encouraged to view this meeting remotely at youtube.com/ISD535, where the live stream video may be found. Present at this meeting are school board members, Superintendent Kent Piquel, a non-voting ex officio member, and Assistant School Board Clerk, Ms. Michelle Severson. Ms. Severson, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Director Amundson.
Here.
Clerk Barlow.
Here.
Director Garcia. Treasurer McLaughlin. Chair Marvin.
Here.
Vice Chair Nathan.
Here.
And Director Workman. We do have a quorum. Thank you.
We have quorum. And we likely have a board member or two who will need to arrive late. At this time, we offer the opportunity to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2.01, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Move approval.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. 3.01, comments to the board. We appreciate all community members who are invested in ensuring that all children receive an equitable, quality education, and we offer this time for those of you who want to speak directly to board members about issues specific to that education. You have access to the guidelines for speakers and know that personal attacks are neither appropriate nor allowed. We ask that when your name is called, please have a seat at this table, provide your name and whether you're a resident of the school district. In order for the microphones in this room to be effective and the sound consistent, we ask for you to remain seated and speak directly into the microphone. And we have one speaker this evening, Andrew Smith. Mr. Smith. Board members do an enormous amount of work outside of board meetings. Do any of you have any reports you want to share with other board members or with the community at this time? Ms. Workman, and welcome.
I do have one, if I can have just 2 seconds. Does anybody else have anything? I guess I'm it. Okay, I'll try and be brief. You may have seen that from your Minnesota School Board Association email that we will be having a legislative advocacy tour in the fall. And also, I would like to, I talked to my 2 colleagues on the legislative committee to ask the superintendent and any cabinet members about starting to work on what our priorities and agenda would be for the legislative session in 2023. And we're hoping on maybe having something kind of put together by the end of December.
Thank you. Other reports? I know at an upcoming meeting, we're going to be spending quite a bit of time talking about the first day and weeks of school. And I know a number of folks here had opportunities to interact with students on their, some of whom were going to school today. Then we're going to move on to the consent agenda. This is 5.0. Are there any issues to be removed for a separate consideration? I know, Dr. Bickel, you had something you wanted to talk about. Maybe you could just go ahead and do that now.
I'd be glad to. Chair Marvin and directors of the board, on the consent agenda is the passing of one of our members of the Rochester Public Schools family. And I want to just take a moment to note that more than just having that in our formal action that the board is about to take on the consent agenda. I didn't have the honor of knowing Jill Nelson, but everybody who knew her said she was just an incredibly positive, wonderful spirit. She was in our amazing food service department, and by all accounts was just a magnet for kids and colleagues. She passed away of breast cancer in August. She was born in 1963 in Rochester. She graduated from Mayo High School in 1981. She worked in the construction field for a few years and then decided it didn't float her boat. And then she came to work in Rochester Public Schools. She started at Century High School, and she proudly referred to herself and told everyone that she was the lunch lady. And then she was most recently, as she continued to describe herself, the lunch lady at Kellogg Middle School. And from her obituary written by her family, here's what I found, and just thought I would take a moment to read it. Jill cherished her time with her grandchildren. She was a wonderful grandma. Attending all the grandkids' sporting events, she went above and beyond for them. Jill loved being surrounded by her pets and always took the time to stop and pet someone else's furry friends. She was an avid Steelers fan and a NASCAR fan. Jill enjoyed traveling. She loved Florida. She enjoyed camping, gardening, and being around people. Her amazing passion for making people laugh was evident with Jill every day. Her heart and home were always open to anyone. Her home is where her heart is. And so our condolences to Jill and her family, and we hope and believe she's home.
Thank you, Dr. Bickel. Melissa?
I was moving on. Was there another
Okay,
comment?
and no, and I was just going to say, I hope Jill and her family understand how she affected in such a positive way so many people, so many kids and adults, that she may never realize how important she was. Thank you. Now, Ms. Amundson.
I note on 5.05 that the customary attachment that I'm used to seeing with the rigorous course waivers isn't there. Is that a change, or is that just I thought it would maybe be, uploaded right before the meeting, but I still don't see it there. So it's hard to approve something that we can't see the details.
I apologize for that, Director Amundson. I am not sure what past practice has been in this instance. I can tell you this is a substitution of Algebra 2 for a student that passed pre-calc in this case. So it was definitely exceeding, but I apologize for that.
Yeah, I think, it's important to know which one we're approving, because if another one comes next week, how does somebody know what was approved, right? So I think usually the application has been attached with or without redaction.
Thank you. I have actually suggested to our policy committee chair that you as a policy committee actually take up the rigorous course waiver process and discussion to think about whether in future the board might want to articulate very clear criteria that then we would follow without necessarily doing student by student, but I regret that that wasn't included for tonight. I am positive I'm remembering this because I did look at that form, and it was a substitution of Algebra 2 for pre-calc for Algebra 2.
I am completely comfortable with that.
Thank you. So
Thank you for raising it.
You're satisfied with that?
Yep,
Okay.
I do.
Any other issues to be removed?
Move approval?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Then we will move to 6.01, case study in school improvement. Dr. Patel.
Chair Marvin and directors of the board, as many of you know, this is the first day of school in some of our schools, or Step into Learning in others. And so in a certain sense, it was a really bad day to ask teachers or principals or even students to come down and present. Fortunately, we have a new chief academic officer in Dr. Efe Agbambu, who is making her way to the table here. And one of the things that has occurred to me since Efe joined us was finding an opportunity for the board and the community to begin both to get to know her better, but also to understand the very impressive improvement work that she has led at both the school and the system level. So I asked Dr. Agbamu today to go back a bit in her history to when she was principal of Park High School, and I'll let her tell you about Park High School. It was a time when I was at the University of Minnesota working on studying this stuff as opposed to trying to actually do it. And Efe was one of the educational leaders around the state that my colleagues and I identified as really exemplary in leading improvement at a time that was frankly quite different from the one we live in now. The need to improve student achievement is the same, but as I'm sure Efe's presentation will describe, it was the era of No Child Left Behind, where if you did not make that improvement solely as measured by standardized tests at the time, there were very significant consequences for schools and for districts. Efe also had distinguished service as a principal in St. Paul and at the district level, but I asked her in the interest of our discussion tonight just to go back to that period at Park High School as kind of a case study in school improvement. As board members are aware, our strategic plan really operates at two levels. There's a very different approach to school improvement at the school level that is focused on quantifiable goals and utilizes research on school improvement. And then the next level is at the system level, as we're looking at changes in district processes. So today we're focused on what does it look like at the school level. And I'm grateful to Efe for being willing to go back a bit into the archives of her own history and revisit that time and what was, I think, some very impressive improvements that high school made in a relatively short period of time. So Dr. Agbamu and board members, I think I speak for Efe when I say that while she's going to go through this presentation, if you have thoughts or questions that, if it's acceptable to the chair, you want to jump in with, we can make this kind of fluid. Efe.
Chair of the board, directors of the board, Superintendent Pical, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here today. So part of what I'm going to show you today about the work we did at Park High School, what was partly to get the school out of corrective action, but at the same time, as I present this, you're going to see other underlining reasons why we had to do that and why we had to exceed. Not just being pulled out of corrective action, but to turn the school completely around. And so, again, I give credit to all the staff, families, and community members who were part of this work. And so I want to, you never know where PowerPoint ends these days of videos, and I really do give credit to the staff and the community members who were part of this work. So at that time, Park was one of two high schools. And the third one was under construction. So it was just Park High School and Woodbury High School. A brief history, Park was opened in 1914 in St. Paul Park and was later moved to a newer building in Cottage Grove. And the deal was to still continue to name it under the St. Paul Park. That was the deal. And so this school serves students living in Cottage Grove, St. Paul Park, Great Cloud Island, Denmark Park, And some students who live outside of the district actually opt to attend PAC. So to create the background, I was principal at Highland Senior High School, and during that process, I was fortunate to have gone through the National Institute of School Leadership Training, which is Minnesota Principals Academy, and I do know that we have that going on right now with 15 representatives from Rochester Public Schools. I was also trained on AVID, Advancement via Individual Determination. Dr. Piquel knows about that. Actually, he brought that to the state, and St. Paul Public School were the first to try it out. And then I was in the St. Paul Principals Academy that was very intentional and focused on training brand new principals to the field. It was a year-long training. And I went into this position with a clear determination to implement all the ideas from NISO. Actually, I had, in my interview, said to the principal of Woodbury that I really cannot understand why she would outperform us, but I intended to change that. She's a close friend of mine whose grandson is in the Rochester Public Schools. So this is the current PHS, Park High School demographic, and I highlighted intentionally 450 special education students because that was why we were on corrective action. And so that was a lot in comparison to the other high schools. So I had about 106 licensed staff, 3 assistant principals, 1 activity director, and of course the principal. I shared this intentionally because they were part of this work. It wasn't just my journey, it was a journey I needed them to be part of. All 106 and the principals and the AD. So what was our goal? We needed to move and better serve 450 special ed students. We needed to make, not just make, but sustain adequate yearly progress as measured by the MCA. We needed to improve learning outcomes for all students. And we needed to, align adequate aligned professional development, access to rigorous curriculum, change beliefs of who can and should access AP and IB. We have beliefs and already in our mindset at the school, and I needed to change the perspectives and beliefs about Park High School in the community. At the time I got into this job, we had just the AP program. There was no IB and there was no AVID. And Park High School was considered, we were considered the other school, the underperforming school. I'm sure we know how that happens in districts. And so when I came in there, I came from an IB World School, and one of the conditions for accepting the job was I needed to bring in the International Baccalaureate program because of the amazing professional development that goes with the program. And then if you're going to have students who don't believe they could take IB, take the International Baccalaureate exam, then you have to have a AVID program to support. And so our goal was not just to provide support for students who wanted to take the IB program or AP program. Our goal was to AVIDize the school. And so there were certain aspects about AVID that we decided was going to be good school-wide. And the story of how I got IB started is a story for another day, because the superintendent said, you go find the money, and I'll tell you how I found the money someday. And I found the money, and we got it going, and we sent teachers to be trained, and there's a teacher who at that time was 55 years old. He's never been on a plane. He got on a plane with me to Texas to be trained, and my board said, how did you convince him to? I said, because I just told him the story. And he went with me on that training. For the first time in his life, he got on a plane. And that was to go for an IB training. And so we went there, and it was very important that what we wanted, the beliefs were unacceptable. The Park High School students cannot, and I don't believe in cannots. I believe in we can. If there's a will, there's a way. And so it took a lot of pressure at convincing the community, meeting with elected board members, meeting with individual board members to say we want IB program for Park High School. And the rationale was to have a program that is steeped in best practices and professional development. And the agreement was that we're going to do that side by side with the advanced placement, which is equally an amazing program too. So the first year was seeking buy-in, getting to understand the school, getting to know who I can talk to, who I'm going to need to convince, like the 54-year-old I got on a plane. He's got a lot of connection. He's only been a teacher at Park High School. He graduated from there actually too. And so first year, no change in outcome. Second year, we made AYP. Third year, we made AYP. And the fourth year, we made AYP. We totally moved all 450 special ed students and a chunk of our kids who are under, who cannot. We moved them clearly out of corrective action. And we won several awards from MDE, and some of the awards that came was, again, me becoming the Minnesota High School Principal of the Year, the Governor Dayton's letter of commendation, and all of that listed there. We have some of the awards that came out of this work that we did. I like to use the collective we, because it was all of us. So as I reflect on that piece, I started to wonder, so what was it we did? It was intentional and purposeful planning. I got to understand the whys, the why we cannot, and spent 1 year trying to flip it around to why we can, and to build the wheel, and to come up with a way. And we are very, very purposeful, because the programs we're bringing in required that from us, that we needed to be purposeful, and we needed to be very intentional, and to be respectful also of the advanced placement, because the advanced placement does have students who like to take it. And we did find out that even students who take the IB classes can also test and take the AP exams too. So it was a win-win for the school. We scrubbed our school data. We treated our data as a living document. It wasn't something to admire and leave on the floor. It was something to put on the table that we were guided by. I met with my assistant principals and my AD every Monday. And then I met with the counselors in the building every other Monday. And the rationale for bringing the counselors in was that at that time, social-emotional needs was there, and I wanted to change the mindset of how counselors perceive of their role and how they needed to be actively involved in talking with students and meeting the social-emotional needs of students and staff. And I wanted them to be part of looking at our data and treating it as a living document. And so that was very critical. And I took time. I have evaluated the staff capacity and realized the fact that if we train them, if we provide the adequate training, they will rise up to that with a support system. And so what we did was each of our assistant principals were responsible for one department. And so it was their responsibility to meet with that department, conduct all the training, sit in the classrooms, observe what is happening, give professional feedback. I was responsible for the mathematics and the English language arts. And so I said, okay, I'll take that on, and you take the rest on. And so it was not just me being the principal, it was division of labor, and we were all held accountable to the same outcome. So the idea of evaluating and building capacity didn't have to come from me, it had to come from everybody. So that's maximizing the capacity of the assistant principal. We had a site team. And so the site team was part of this work. every teacher at Park High School read results now, including the site team. Actually, we read it at the site team first with the parents and got the okay to bring it out across the school. And so that was the basis for, that was some level of foundation for the work we did. And we did, we actually that word should be, we brought in critical friends, not bringing, but again, I'm putting in kind of suggestive to bring in critical friends. Every partner that every person that partnered with us became a critical friend. And so when we have to look at our data, we brought in our critical friends. We wanted to be transparent. We wanted to get external pushback from them. And those were one of the very difficult times. After those meetings, you go back and you can't go to sleep because it takes an external partner to really tell you the truth. And they see what we are hiding, they see the transparencies, because if we're using, like Plato was one of the tools we're using. And so Plato, the agent from there would sit at this meeting, and all of the Peter Rock from the district, who is now superintendent in Prescott, Wisconsin, would sit in those meetings too. He was the executive director of evaluation and all of that. So we brought everybody in, we had our data there, and they would tell us our area of weaknesses, our areas of strength, and they would actually tell us where they perceive us to be favoring some students over the other. And so those critical friends sat with us at least once a year as we plan for the next school year. And again, another feedback that I want to give back, advice is, if you're in the MPA, bring feedback and implement practices as relevant. If we're doing it, then we should apply some of those pieces. And so I had to find this, I guess, as principal of the Minnesota Principal of the Year Peace. And Agbamu, who has been in the school for 4 years, instituted the IB program in 2009. And it involves more challenging, rigorous courses and holistic approach towards preparing students for the 21st century. So these are some of the sustained outcomes that are still on at Park High School today. There's still the increase of post-secondary attendance. Our kids still do that. Our IB diploma candidates score higher on IB exams than state and national average. Pleases my soul. When I saw that on the website, I said, yes. And then to be a full IB diploma candidate, it's like getting a liberal arts degree at the high school level. And so since its inception, we've had 62 full diploma candidates, and 11 of Park High School students have earned perfect scores, and the increased number of students who take the IB exams, who take the AP exams, and who go to PSEO. And so this is the work I did, and there are a lot of work I really cannot truly explain, because our students at Park High School perceive themselves to be less than the Woodbury High School. So there were a lot of cheerleading thing and beginning to rethink that belief. And I had to be a cheerleader for my staff. I'll say this and I'll be quiet. I'm Nigerian, and we use a lot of analogy. At a staff meeting one day, I said, please show me anybody wearing 24 karat gold? And everybody did that. And I said, if you know the process this goes through for you to be able to pay thousands for it, then I need you to understand that our students are like those stones we bring from the ground. It's our responsibility, our role, to pull them through the purifying process and make them so valuable that they come out as 24 whatever karat gold you all put on today. So I always, I'm a believer that every child is a born achiever. and it was my role to sell it to my staff and to my community at that time. And there's something I didn't talk about. We believe that if students are going to go to colleges, then I partnered, she's now the Senator, Kala Bigham, who graduated from Park High School. We started what is known as Conversation with Colleges. We started it, and we bring colleges to Park High School, and then we bring the community to Park High School to have conversations with colleges. Because most of us students, their parents never went to college, and the process is very daunting. And so now I found that it is not just a Park High School thing, now it's a district-wide thing, conversations with colleges, where parents can go and ask questions, and 2-year colleges, technical colleges, 4-year colleges, just to get them to see. So Dr. Piquel told me 15 minutes. I hope I kept to that time. So that is it in a nutshell,
Thank you.
what we did.
You were good. Melissa?
I think it's a great thing for us to be thinking about. I know that the district looked for IB in the past, but the cost was prohibitive, and we have a referendum coming up. It seems to me that could be something that could be worked into that proposal, just a thought. But the idea of increasing rigor for students who perhaps aren't at grade level, I would expect that there were additional supports put in place. I know sometimes it's been proposed for those types of, IB or AP classes to have a 2-hour block for a 1-hour class for those students. What kinds of tactics did you use to make sure that everybody would be successful, even if it was a sudden increase in rigor for it?
We had the AVID program, which was aside, and like I said, we tried to AVIDize the whole school, where the Cornell note taking skills were taught to all students. The binder for organization, we had bought binders. Particularly our 9th graders carried binders with them, and the Cornell notes in it. One of the things we did was that there was no way. I'm going to use John. John is teaching IB math. He just cannot teach IB math alone. He has to teach Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 and use the same strategies and skills in those classes. So by default, our students who do not think they can, we're also being exposed to international baccalaureate. And then we brought in Plato. Plato was a program we adapted at that time to accelerate our students who were struggling in mathematics, and we put our best teacher in that room to be able to support and nurture the students who were actually struggling. One of the things we did about our 450 special ed students was we went into co-teaching. We created co-teaching partners, and that was how they were exposed to core content. And again, there are students who, like cognitively delayed students and all of that. Of course, they have their specialized programs. But the other students, EBD and all of that, who we know could do the work, we intentionally placed in co-teaching classes for the content area. So they were getting the benefit of the regular ed teacher and the special ed teacher in moving them forward. So we felt at that time that wasn't a time to baby. That was a time for us adults to strengthen our skills and pushing and be more present and supportive. And so we had a lot of co-teaching happening. About 26% of my students were ELL. I had one ELL teacher. And so we are very purposeful in scheduling them into co-taught English or math or science classes and making sure that the ELL, we clustered them. Somebody I'm going to have to give credit to at this point is at that time the then president of our teacher union. He was fortunate, I say to him, to be teaching one class in my school at that time. He was truly an ally for the walk. And Tom McCarthy, I want to really give him credit. We went for early morning walks. Me, my cup of tea, and him, his cup of coffee. He says, I know your brain has been working overnight. I say, yes. So we're going to go on a walk, and if you have any objection, you better give me reasons for them. Don't just say no. How can we adjust and readjust? And so we did that for the 4 years. All I need to do is stand in front of his classroom, and he knows. We're going for a walk. Yeah, let's do what the French presidents do, and they make good decisions. So Tom was truly an ally for the walk. If it wasn't for him and the support, and our teachers saying that we have his support, we probably would have struggled a lot, but he was truly an ally.
I hope your early morning walks will become a little bit easier with time.
Yes, with time. Yeah, it became easier. He would tell me when I'm being spicy. So if you're being spicy now, this isn't going to fly. That's okay, let's talk about this. What are the alternatives?
Mr. Barlow.
Yes, again, welcome, Dr. Agbamu. And as our Chief Academic Officer, I'm sure you'll be able to, you're already working to evaluate, and to probably recommend some of the same strategies and or approaches that you used at Park. But I'm curious, because sometimes we hear, well, if you're taking from one group of students who are doing well, and you referenced those teachers who maybe were teaching the accelerated courses, and they were placed with the students who maybe had ability. It sounded to me like you believe that all students are born achievers. That was important versus that hurdle of thinking, well, some students have it, others don't. And if I may just quickly put in a word for equity. See, that's all equity is the belief that all students can achieve. And we have to, utilize the resources to ensure that all students are able to achieve, versus simply placing resources to a limited group of students. But how did those students who perhaps had access all the time, did their scores decline, or did they? And that's what I didn't suspect that they
No,
did.
they didn't. The intent wasn't to leave anybody behind.
Right,
No
right,
child
right.
left behind.
And I think it's important to communicate, because there's a mistaken notion that by honoring all students, that some students are gonna, those good students, we're gonna lose them. But you're saying no, not science, but the proof. I'm not from Nigeria, I'm from Alaska, but our statements are, the proof is in the pudding. So thank you for sharing that, because it takes off the table that errant belief and rhetoric that, some students will somehow fail or not do as well. And I'm glad to hear, and this case study is there as a matter of record to say, no, that's not the case at all. And then very briefly, I made some other notes. How were you able to, on slide 7, the reflection advice, engage the parent and community? How were you able to bring them along to where they felt a part of and were supportive of and engaged in? You mentioned the head of the teachers union. That was an important piece, because teachers have to be on board as well, but the parents and community. Can you maybe speak briefly to that?
It wasn't, I'll tell you, the first day we had an IB meeting, we had a basketball parents group. The same time in the library, we had the getting to know IB. There were 10 families there. And if you walked through the cafeteria, it was packed to the brim. And so again, it's, I don't give up. It's I don't know. There was just a need, there was the desire to be very sure that what NISO put me through for 1 year could really work. So I was in that experimental mode of mind to say everything they did around. One of the things we did, we had literacy across curriculum. Every teacher, we brought a group of, we had an interdisciplinary approach to teaching reading. There's the perception that reading can only be taught at a lower grade. So we put together an interdisciplinary team led by teachers. And again, I made sure Tom McCarthy was part of that so he could feel it and tell me. And so they prepped together. I had a mentor, Mary Beth Blagan, who was Minnesota National Teacher of the Year. So I had Mary Beth Blagan as my coach, and I paid her to be my coach. And so there was all of this pre-planning that would take place, and then the strategies were taught to the general group. So it was, in that process, of course, you might get a couple of teachers who will say, this is too much for me. The system allows teachers to bid out, to ask to be moved to a different school every April. And so that did happen, which was okay, because we needed buy-in for the work, and that was critical. So we had an interdisciplinary approach to teaching reading, so students can have their textbook and make sense of it. That was homegrown, done by teachers for teachers. And so it was just, yes, it was a lot of work.
And then finally, so recently, our MCAs came out, and Rochester was not unique. There's a statewide national decline. But be that as it may, have you seen or do you sense anything that, I guess I want to ask, do you see opportunities there, versus deficits? Do you see, a future in terms of how we can overcome and how to put our parents' community at ease? Because sometimes that's the one thing people look at and gauge a district, a superintendent, its cabinet and board, the data, okay? And so what opportunities do you see? And you've only been here a couple months. I wouldn't expect you to have you may have a full-fledged plan. I don't want to, sell you short, but can you maybe offer that hope as to, we're working on things and maybe something that we can maybe hear tonight that lets us know it's going to be okay,
Yeah, I think it's going to be okay. I've had time to meet with some of the staff I directly oversee. They are just amazing people, fantastic, dynamic people, but now my role is to work with them, to be intentional, to be purposeful, to put in systems, procedures, and to be very mindful of decisions. So there's that will. And in terms of our schools, I haven't been fortunate. Jackie and I were going to go on several school rides when this happened, so we haven't done that. But if anybody had told me that Park High School was capable of changing when I took the job, I probably would have said no, but I believe everything is possible. And I believe that people work within their zone of maximum development. And it's our role to expand that for them.
Thank you.
Dr. Agbamu, quick question. You mentioned AVID a number of times. This is a program which basically teaches students how to learn skills, study skills, and how to approach texts and so on. Did your teachers teach those skills right along in with their regular content, or was it a separate course that students took?
AVID I'll say yes and I'll say no. My teachers taught, we selected aspects of AVID, like the note taking.
Okay.
AVID was very clear about the fact that students' ability to take notes. It's not just any note taking, it's the Cornell notes that came out of Cornell University, where they take their notes and they summarize it and then they write all the key points. And so we decided that there were certain aspects that we needed to AVIDize the school around. And so one of them is the note taking, one of them is the organizational skills, with the binders, and we started that with the ninth graders with the intent of building it up. And then there were other aspects. However, AVID does have what you might call an elective class where it has to be parental approved, student approved, and then they come together and they're in a class where the AVID teacher brings in AVID tutors. And so it's those AVID tutors that, again, those tutors are trained with AVID strategies. They don't give the answers. They use the Socratic method of questioning to have students arrive at the answers. So there's that support system that comes into play. AVID is almost about 30, 40 years old. It came up, it was started by Mary Catherine, who was a teacher, and there was all of this desegregation of schools at that time in California, and all of those things. So she said, give me these 15 students who people felt were not capable. And she started AVID with those 15 students. And they turned out to be just fantastic, amazing citizens, neuroscientists, and all of that.
I spent just a few minutes today with a young man at one of our middle schools who needed to call home, and I took him to the office, and there was the desk phone, and he said, yep, just go ahead and call home, and he just looked at the phone, and I mean, he's a wonderful, bright, incredible kid, and he just looked at the phone, and I'm thinking, call home, and he'd never used anything but his cell phone before. He had no idea. And so I think that idea of some kids pick stuff up, and other kids, if they haven't had the opportunity, they don't get it. And providing them with those skills so that they know how to take notes and they know what to pay attention to. That's huge. I love that. Ms. Nathan.
So thank you and welcome. What I'm really impressed about, aside from you being a force of nature in your building to organize the building around all this work, is that our SCIP process and our strategic plan provides that fertile ground for all of our schools to take that bull by the horns and do the same thing. From your experience, though, what should we learn from lessons about how the district level, that might be the board, it might be administration, it might be the superintendent, can get in the way of that building level work? And what can we do, if there's one thing we can do to support it, what should we keep in mind as we see our SCIP and our schools work through that process?
Yeah, I guess at the district level, you provide guidance that comes in form of the SCIP, but at the same time, it's, I hope I'm answering this very well, it's to, I lost my line of thought.
Happens to me all the time.
All the time.
From the district level, what do we do to support that school improvement process?
Okay, it's just to put in systems in place and make sure that the SCIP plan is aligned to the strategic plan, and empower our students. Empower the principals to create systems that works for them. And so I would have my assistant superintendent come in once in a while, and I'll sit and I'll explain what I'm doing and why I need to do that, and this is how it's aligned to the district strategic plan. And so once that is done, mine was the assistant sup was just to monitor, but allowed for the principal's expertise in implementing clearly the strategic plan that is aligned to the vision. In the last analysis is improved learning outcome for all students, preparing students for college and career readiness, or for whatever profession they need to go to if they want to go into the military, to ensure that the socio-emotional needs of students are met. And so if we trust the principals with this and we hold them accountable to that, but allow them make their mistakes and learn from their mistakes and debrief regularly, I think that was the flexibility I got, and to be able to do that. And again, I could share stories where I was told, FA, you can't do that. And I'll say, okay, put it in writing. And I'll send the letter to my parents. And they will back off and not come back. I'm not teaching anybody to do anything. Yeah, because we found out that our Park High School students were not taking the ACT test because they had to work on Saturdays. Some of them have to work to supplement income. And so the site team, led by my union president, Tom, agreed that we were going to, I've told Dan that I want to work with him closely.
Yeah. Dan's listening, and he's
Yes.
feeling the pressure.
Yeah, no, he's a good man. So I said that we agreed that we're going to make Park High School a testing ground, so they don't have to travel to Woodbury to take the exams. And then we had an option where the exams were done on Saturdays. And then we found that our students could not stay after school because they had to go to work. And so we got one of our staff who volunteered to teach it at 0 hour. So we got the ACT test going 0 hour. And I was questioned why I should do that. And I said, this person who volunteered to teach it is a JFROC, and we have the JFROTC program. And so he volunteered. I'm going to teach it at 0 hour. My salary doesn't come from the district's budget, so I'm going to be able to do this. So when I was questioned, I said, he volunteered to do it. We're not paying him to do it. However, if you don't want me to do it, put it in writing and I'll tell my parents. And they walked away, never came back. The intent was, again, to accelerate learning outcome using the feedback given to justify what we have to do. And it was a team of teachers and parents who came. I'm not going to take credit for all of this. I just want to be very clear. There were teachers who were gung-ho on making this work. When it gets to the point where we go for, like Dr. Bikel, we had the start of the school year, and Park High School shows up, and your colleagues from Woodbury and all of that stand up to applaud my staff, it's because they worked very hard. And it was a collective effort, and we achieved what we wanted to, that we can do it. And I believe that this work can be done anywhere, but done differently. And people just have to be, it's just the willingness to take the risk, but as aligning it to the district plan. Yeah.
Ms. Workman.
So one of the things that really caught my ear from what you said was that for some teachers, it was just too much, and so they would have the opportunity to transfer to another building. So did the work that you were doing at Park High School, did it stay confined to Park High School, or did it spread? I mean, I'm thinking of if you try and implement something like this all at once on a district level, you're going to run into a lot of problems right away, and resistance. You know, nothing succeeds like success. So how would you deal with that?
IB, you cannot have more than one IB at a district level. The other schools are AP Ward schools, or Project Lead the Way, which was Eastridge. So IB, we wanted IB to be unique, but AVID actually started from Park High School and is all over the district now. So we have it, I think, K-12 across the district.
One more. Yeah. Ms.
So one of
Newton.
the other things you mentioned when you talked about scrubbing the school data was your focus with the counselors on the social and emotional learning piece. And I think in the times that you were doing this, there was an overt emphasis on the academic side. So I don't even think the term social emotional learning was not. So the fact that you were pioneering this early on, and I know that in our strategic plan, that piece of social emotional learning provides the foundation for the academics. Can you say a little bit more about looking at it today, knowing what you know about the needs of the students today? How does that social emotional learning work in parallel with raising the academic achievement of our students?
We attempted to do it side by side to the best of how we could, but today it's very explicit and it has to be done side by side. In fact, some of the most brilliant kids you can even imagine in your needs have social emotional needs. And so we had to bring counselors in to work with and our counselors knew that, particularly at the high school, it was beyond counting credits and getting them in the right classes. It was providing that additional socio-emotional piece for them. So that was done. And if it became too much for the counselors, they'll bring in the social worker. but we were able to. We were all social workers, basically. There were kids I met with in my office regularly and who pinky promised. Apparently, pinky promise is a big thing for teenagers at that time. Some of them completed high school just based on pinky promise. I had one who went to St. Thomas. I say, at the end of every semester, you got to come pinky promise that you're going to finish this. And she finished. So again, I did my own form of social-emotional support with my, when you have a kid who doesn't want to take a test because he's afraid of the MCAs and brings out his cell phone and leaves his cell phone on the table. In the past, it's go to the principal's office, we're going to kick you out. But I was called, FA, we have this child who, and I go there, I say, come here, son, let me give you a hug. I know you can do this, you're going to go and finish this. And I gave him a hug, told him to take his cell phone and give it to the right person. I didn't take the cell phone from him, he needed to follow the rules. He went back, put his cell phone down, finished the MCAs, and I had asked, did he act up after that? They said no. I said, oh, all he needed was a mama hug. And we moved on from there. So I wasn't bashful about hugging 6 foot tall boys or girls. It was part of the deal.
Well, Dr. Agbamu, thank you so much, and we are really so grateful that you're in this district and that we get to continue working with you. It's going to be, we're looking forward to some really, really positive changes. So thank you.
You.
I go back.
Then we are at 9.01, approval of budget adjustments as of June 30th, 2022. Dr. Piquel.
Chair Marvin, directors of the board, it is my pleasure to ask John Carlson, our Executive Director of Finance and Technology and lots of other stuff, to come and update the board on this important point in our budgetary process. Believe it or not, we are, am I right, today we started our audit. That's right. Like, it seems we just finished, and we are starting again. So this is an important part of that process. John.
Very good. Thank you, Chair Marvin, Directors, and Superintendent Piquel. I'm here to do the final budget adjustment for last school year. It does seem odd to do a budget adjustment for the last school year on the first day of school of the new year, but it is something our auditors asked us to do to bring the board-approved budget in line with what we actually have in the finance system. So just a couple of explanations of what's going on here. We continually make adjustments in the finance system throughout the year in between school board meetings. What we're doing is usually accounting for things like grants and donations that are coming in nearly continuously. We also had a couple of debt issuances late in the school year that missed the last budget revision process, so we want to get the budget trued up for that. Well, that's basically what I said right there. The middle point in there is on the health insurance trust. As we were watching claims for our health insurance pool come in, they were running hot and high, so we needed to put in an extra adjustment for that, for your approval as well. And then again, it's additional grants, donations, and fundraiser. So I tried to, rather than make this really complicated and long and 40 slides like it sometimes is, just kind of condense it down really quick. So the previous budget for revenues for the whole school district was $349,113,000. What we're asking you to do is approve an additional $60,697,000 of revenue. Again, that is primarily related to issuing those two debts in the late in the school year, and those are called revenues for purposes of accounting in our system. The other local revenues are fundraisers, donations, grants, things like that that came in. There was some additional federal money that we learned about, and then we budgeted for summer school. And then MDE asked us to move part of our basic skills revenue out of state. That's why it's showing as a deduction there, and put it actually in the federal category because they were paying us with federal funds. Kind of goofy. We haven't been asked to do that before. So that would bring the revised budget for last year's revenues to $409,810,000. Again, the whole district, all funds. On the expenditure side, we had a previously approved expenditure budget of $513,794,000. We're only asking to approve $3,615,000 of additional expenditures. Again, part of that is those grants, donations. We put those right in the budget so they're allowed to be spent. And then the closing costs and the things we needed to out of the debts that we issued. So I'd bring the revised budget, final budget for expenses up to $517,409,000. So then a final look at what the budget will be in the books, what we will be audited against. $409 million on the revenues, $517 million on the expenditures. The projected end of year fund balance, the June 30 balances that will be left unspent, it will be $147,706,000. I'll just highlight on the general fund, we're not projecting really any percentage change there from the last time because we're not really adjusting much in the general fund, but it's 12.5% will be the projected unassigned fund balance, 18.6% total fund balance. I'll just highlight on the unassigned because I had a question earlier today on that. 12.5% is comparative to the new school board or updated school board policy of 8% that was just recently changed. So we'll finish better than budget there. And the reason we're running a little bit higher than the 8% that is the floor or the minimum now is part of our 3-year roadmap to bring the budget back into alignment. And we plan to pull some of that money out this school year and next school year, just like we've been talking about for the last 8 to 9 months. As a percentage, 12.5% represents about a month and a half of expenditures in reserve. So it's not anything too expansive. If you listen to personal finance experts, they would say have 3 to 6 months of savings in reserve to weather various types of uncertainties in your own personal life. So as a school district, we're sitting on a reserve of about 1.5 months of expenditures. The annual audit, again, started this morning and will continue through the next Friday. And then we will be bringing results to you on November 1st to show you the final numbers for this last school year. And I think that's all I had. Yep. I would just highlight, there's nothing controversial in here, so it's not like we're trying to pull a fast one or anything. We are trying to get everything adjusted so that when the auditors do their tests, that it does match a formal board approval to what's in the finance system.
Mr. Carlson, the board members have had 3 attachments for some time. Are those available? And it's easier for us to see them. Are those available
Yes.
to the general public on board docs?
They certainly are. One of those reports or attachments I've updated for the first time. I think it was the same for 10 years before I got here. It's been the same for the last 10 years I've been here. Tried to reformat a little bit different, make it a little easier to read, so it's in columns by federal funds, state funds, so on and so forth, to bring a little more clarity to how the money is coming in and where it's going.
So on September 6th board docs, everyone can
Go ahead and look at
click in
those
and see.
attachments. Yep.
Ms. Amundson.
So that 12.5% being about a month and a half, when we had the cost shifting from the state of Minnesota back a long time ago, how much of our percentage did that?
Yeah,
dig
so I
into?
think there was a shutdown of 2 to 3, 4 weeks, if I remember. And so, we were able to stay fully funded because we had a reserve. We didn't have to stop operations and literally lay everybody off until we could get state payments in, or we didn't have to go to a bank and borrow any money. So there is a valid reason to having a little bit of cushion there.
And then
just
there
in
was the
case.
time that they deferred, they changed the whole payment schedule and basically deferred it, what was it, a year
That's
or
right. They went
something?
down to paying us 60% of what we were owed in a year, comparative to 90% is where we sit now. We're in normal times where we're getting 90% of what we're supposed to every school year.
And so about how much would that eat into
Yeah,
that
so
12.5?
we get around $200 million a year from the state. So when they're withholding about 10% of that back, they're withholding about $20 million until the next school year. Being that's on a continuous rolling basis, it's not like we're all of a sudden short $20 million because we've got the $20 million from last year that came in this year and then delay the other
But
20.
just these questions are more to illustrate that this is an important thing to be focused on, and it isn't wasteful. It's actually put us ahead of the game when we were in that situation compared to other school districts who then had to borrow money and pay interest on it.
That's right, that's right.
And it does happen.
It does happen.
happen.
And we're pretty good. We've got a pretty rigorous process for forecasting out how much cash we're going to need and on what days we're going to need it. And so we can look literally and tell you, I think this year it's about January 28th is going to be our low point. So we're timing some investments to mature on the 27th so that we have enough money to meet all of our obligations on the 31st of January.
Ms. Nathan?
And while this vote tonight will put everything into one document, this is not the first time the board has voted to approve some of this additional revenue. So we took votes, if you go back and look at our minutes, we voted on the Series 2022A bonds and the 2022B certificates of participation, which by my calculations is the vast majority of that 60 million in new revenue.
That's right. You're saying it exactly right.
Other questions for Mr. Carlson?
I do think there was one question too I didn't answer that came in on email about the health insurance. So where does that money come from? So during the year of COVID, we noticed that our claims went way down. I think there was just lack of access to doctors and people put off surgeries for their knee replacements, things like that. So we had accrued a balance of about $11.5 million. Then last year claims kind of picked up again, and then this year they've really picked up. We're going to end with about $5 to $6 million in reserve. So it's not a panic. It's not anything that we're not expecting. We do hope that claims will subside and kind of level out here and be a little more even going forward.
All right, seeing no other questions, this is already an action item, and I'll read the resolution, which I just lost. Be it resolved, the School Board of Independent School District 535 does hereby approve 2021-2022 budget adjustments through June 30th, 2022 in the following amounts: $60,697,055 of additional revenues for a grand total revenue budget of $409,810,700 and $3,615,099 of additional expenditures for a grand total expenditure budget of $517,409,546.
Move approval?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Annual board calendar update and other business. Anybody have questions about the annual board calendar or items that you would like to be considered for a future agenda? Hearing none. Then this regular meeting will be moving to a closed session as permitted by Minnesota Statute 13D.05 Subdivision 3A to discuss ongoing labor negotiations. Following the closed session in the Edison Building Conference Room, we will return to the board table, reconvene, and adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion to recess for this purpose?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And motion passes, and we are in recess at 6:39 PM. And for those of you sitting here, when we come back, we will reconvene and then adjourn. So
Nothing
it's
is
over. Okay. The board meeting is reconvened at 7 PM. Clerk Barlow, will you please read the names of those present at the closed session?
Present at the closed session were board members Workman, Edmondson, Marvin, Barlow, Nathan, as well as Superintendent Piquel, from HR, Bakken, and from Finance, Carlson.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to amend the agenda to add an item, approval of the 2022-2024 non-scheduled work guide agreement.
Second?
The motion has been made and seconded to amend the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion that has been added reads as follows. Be it resolved, the School Board of Independent School District 535 does hereby approve the 2022-2024 non-scheduled work guide agreement.
Move approval.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is approved, and it is now 7:01, and we are adjourned.